What do I need to know into the weekend about the soap opera, the Greek drama in Dresden?
Tom, you need to know that there's a difference between a possibility and a potential. This was the big kerfuffle last night. Madame Lagarde gave an interview for the Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. They initially quoted her saying that the Greek exit was a potential, it was a possibility, excuse me. Then they went back and forth. There's a problem with the translation, and it turns out it's actually only a potential. That is the sense of how really fraught and fragile this situation is. All the diplomats, all the finance ministers we've talked to this morning, uniformly negative, saying the velocity of the talks need to increase. Tom?
Hans, we got a sense yesterday with a quote from Wolfgang Schäuble, the finance minister of Germany, that this is a dance he's been through before, that first the Greeks say, we're close to a deal, and then everybody else says, we have no idea what you're talking about. Is that what we've been seeing in the last 48 hours?
Yeah. That's almost as reliable as the bells tolling here behind me. The same thing played out just at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. Yanis Varoufakis gave an interview to a radio station in Athens, talking about how they're very close to a deal. Just a few more hang-ups. But he said there's one red line on that is the new agreement cannot be more austerity. But it's clearly austerity and budget discipline, which is being demanded, being called for by the IMF, by the ECB, and by the EU partners that are the creditors to Greece. So in some ways, Varoufakis says the same thing, and in some ways we have the same red lines, and that's why privately you're starting to hear there's not a lot of optimism. Guys?
Yeah, I mean, the scramble is always that, it doesn't look like it's ever going to happen, and then somehow overnight at the last minute the Europeans pull it together. That doesn't seem like that's what's happening right now. Do you actually get the sense from the people where you are in Dresden, from the people that this is not going to happen by June 5th?
Yeah. I get the sense, but I've been wrong on that so many times, I don't want to actually fully acknowledge my sense on that. I mean, you guys remember the movie The Fight Club? I think the first rule of a Greek deadline is that there is no Greek deadline. Even that June 5 deadline that we were talking about, it turns out that there's an IMF procedure that says that you can actually, there's a procedure from the 70s, you can lump your payments together and put them at the end of the month. So that June 5 deadline could be pushed all the way back into the latter half of June. The only other country to avail themselves of that, Zambia in the 1980s. You got to give the lawyers credit, the IMF, for finding this one. Give themselves a couple more weeks.